We live in Midway, Utah, small little, I don't know, one life, 5,000 people town, just away from people, which is exactly what I need, I think.
Yes, and when you say we, give us the landscape, your family, kind of age range, how many kiddos, how long you've been married.
Yeah, so we've been married, my wife Danny, we've been married 19 years almost. We have four kids, a 16-year-old girl, a 13-year-old boy, a 10-year-old girl, and a little seven, almost eight, turns eight next week, 8-year-old boy. And for some reason, he's funny. He's like this quirky kid. His name's Beckett, but like 2, 3 years ago, he decided his name was Bob, and he tells literally everybody, his classmates, his teachers, everybody calls him Bob. And it's really still weird when people come to the door and they're like, "Hey, is Bob here?" And I'm like, who is Bob? Anyway, so we've got little Bob, and
So
then we
Beckett's the cool name, though. Beckett's like the cool
it's
name, and he
awesome. Yeah,
subbed it
like
out for Bob.
yeah, he's Beck, right? Like such a cool name. We felt like we gave him the best name, and he's Bob. And I don't get it, but he just embraces it. One day he had to give he was asked to give a little talk at church in the little primary class, and he's like, "I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it." And I said, "If you do it," and our family calls him Beckett, but I said, "If you do it, I will call you Bob for one
I was
week."
gonna say how long? Yeah, one
It
one
was one
week.
week, and he was like, "I'm in." And he gave a little
Amazing.
talk. And every time I messed up and called him Beckett, he was like, "Dad, it's Bob." And I was like,
I
"Sorry,
I
Bob.
haven't
Sorry."
heard this story before, and this is brand new. Although my dad, he was 20 years younger than his older siblings, so he was like a whoa surprise. And my dad's in heaven now, and he loves this story. His name was Gene, but basically from the moment he was born, his older siblings were like, "What? We're not calling him Gene. We're calling him Chuck." But they renamed him Chuck, and it stuck. I mean, he never went by Gene
Yeah,
his entire
never
life.
Gene.
So those are probably
Yeah.
the only two times I've heard a story like that.
It's
So
so weird. It's so weird, but yeah. So we've got the four kids, and then we've got a little puppy golden retriever. His name is Putter, like the golf club, and he turns one next month. And he's not little by any means. He's about 70 pounds at this point, and just getting bigger every day. So
okay, amazing. Now, if your kids were going to introduce you, what are some of the words or phrases? What might they say, good or bad? What are some of the ways they describe Tanner?
oh man, I don't even know. That's a great question. I think that they would, lean into the motivational side. Probably I'm a little too motivational all the time.
Sure.
Maybe they need a little less motivation. Sometimes when I drop my kids off at school, every day I drop my older two kids off at school, and every once in a while I do these school drop off motivation moments where on the Instagram or whatever, I just drop some sort of motivation, and they hate it. Like they just hate it. They don't want to hear it from me. And it's funny with what I do, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but like I talk with teens all the time,
Mhm.
and that's what I do. My teens don't want to listen to me. Like they're done with me. So I don't know. It's probably a little on the motivation side. Hopefully they would say that I'm a dad that's there,
Yeah.
that's there for them is what I would hope. But
Yeah, that presence theme, which we will come back around into that a little deeper. My wife and I have been talking about just things that I hope for my four girls. Uh, Many times we don't see. I hope for them, but many times I don't see this about them or this about them. And I
mhm.
was reminding her that like planting seeds, I just don't want to be the dad who's like poking around at the muddy soil, trying to like
Mm.
rush that seed to take, to go after and take fruit. And so the same way, like it's interesting that you say that, like, this is what I do. I love this. My deep passion is helping teens and motivating and encouraging and brightening their, and yet your kids are like, I'm over that.
Yeah, they don't really care. They get a lot of it, but they don't really care.
Yeah, but I think they do that. So that what I would speak back is like those seeds
Yeah.
all add up. And we had a moment this morning that was just like, oh wow, my 9-year-old like was what we prayed for and haven't really seen the last few months. It like
Hmm.
blossoming moment. And my wife and I caught each other's eyes. We're like, that's what we've been hoping for and have not seen. So
It's awesome. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
it's the long game, right? It's the long
It,
game.
it has to be. It has to
Yeah.
be.
Could you go after a little bit of what you do and what you've been just invited into with teenagers. I know you're using social media, you're using speaking, but yeah,
Yep.
help us understand a little bit your deep passions and how that's playing out.
Sure. Yeah, I want people to be happy and I want people to reach their potential. And a few years ago, I just dropped my kids off at school, and that's some of my alone time when I get to think and just be. And I've always had a passion for motivation and helping people, and a dream of being a motivational speaker. And I was driving around this lake. We live next to a lake up here in Utah, and I just had the strongest impression, one of the strongest impressions I've ever had,
Mm.
that was very clear. Tanner, you need to focus on teenagers.
Yes.
And I and I'd had it before, which is the sad part. But this time was different. And I didn't know exactly how to do it, or what to do, or what it meant, or what the path forward is. And I think that's some of the fears of life, right? Like, and probably why I didn't do anything in the first place, because I just, great, okay, focus on teenagers, cool. Like, doing what?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know. And so, but that day changed things for me, and I just started, on Instagram, which I'd already had kind of a motivational Instagram at that point, but I just changed to focusing on teenagers. And then through a lot of just like divine intervention, I found myself speaking in front of a middle school, and from there it just snowballed. And so what I do is I go in and I help teenagers live their best life. And I do it by helping them recognize the things that are holding them back right now. And I think when we look at teenagers, or we look at adults, like everybody right now, there are so many things that are standing between us and who we want to become. And the path forward is by recognizing what are the things that are holding us back, acknowledging them, and then being very intentional about moving forward beyond that. And so I call it finding your 1 second of strength. I believe that there is a moment, and if you look back at your life and all the great things that you've done, or the listeners have done, if you look back at all those great things, there was a decision point. And in that decision point, 1 second of strength is the opportunity to hack your brain
Mhm.
to do the thing that is going to be the best for you and give you the growth that you need. And sometimes that is so scary to have to take that step. Tanner, go talk with teenagers. What? I don't know how. But I believe that you can hack your brain in that moment and do it. And so that's one of the things I tell teenagers when I go and talk to them. I just say, look, here's some of the things that are holding you back. And a lot of times today, it's social media, it's TikTok, it's the amount of time we spend on there. And I always tell them, look, I'm not going to tell you today to delete TikTok, to delete Snapchat, or crap chat, as I call it. I'm not going to tell you to do those things. But if you feel it in your heart, then I want you to find your 1 second of strength
Find it.
to do it, because the very next second will be the best second of your life. And the reason is because you will feel free, and the weight of the world will be lifted off your shoulders in that moment. And so you can take that learning and take that applying and apply it to literally any aspect of your life, and it will change the way you view the world. It'll change the way that you interact with the world. It'll change the person that you are when you find and decide that you are going to take your second of strength and go forward. So that's what I try and help teenagers do
Yes.
and live.
Well, I want to apply this to dads and apply this as a coaching tool that us dads can use for our
Mm-hmm.
kids. And immediately my mind went to the two phrases I tell my daughters when I'm teaching them to water ski is say this in your mind. I give them some practical tips on how to get up on water skis, but then I tell them, say in your mind, I can do this. And then say in your mind, this is going to be fun. Like I
Mm-hmm.
like tell them to say these two things in your mind as you're starting. So with that as just an example, take us into first how we can find that strength as dads. So if you're
Yeah.
coaching some dads on finding that 1 second of strength, and give even some other examples besides like the looking at things that would keep you from being courageous, being strong in that moment, making the harder decision. Yeah, take us into a little more coaching on the 1 second strength.
Yeah. So to me, it's about in the moment being very present. And we talk about I think that's such a phrase, like, be present, and it's like, okay, well, cool. Like, but this concept of being present in the moments that require your presence is really important. And as a dad, that's where I've used the 1 second of strength to change the relationship with my kids, change the relationship with my wife, change the relationship with my dog. There's actually a study that says that dogs are depressed because we are spending too much time on our phones and not enough time with our dogs. It's a
It's a
real
real
study.
study, a real
It's a
study.
real
Yes,
study.
I believe it.
And I believe it too. And when you look at that, you're like, okay, but absolutely true, right? Because we're so embedded. And so an example is when I come home from work, when I walk in the door, I put my phone down, and my attention and my intention is right there with my kids. It's hugs, it's time, whether it's dinner, whether it's whatever. But I'm also bringing with me the weight of the world of work, the weight of the world of all the things that I am shouldering as a dad, because let's be honest, it's a lot, right? I mean, there are times, and 2 days ago, I dropped off my kids at school. I sat in my car and it was an emotional song, and I just cried.
Mm,
And I was like, I don't know what is going on.
mm,
Like what's happening here? And because the weight of the world that we shoulder, and the responsibility of taking care of kids and families, and making sure that the lights are on and food's on the table and all those things is a lot. And I shoulder that every day, but I can't let that come between me and my kids. I can't let that determine the relationship of of all of that. And another example, I had a work trip. So aside from speaking, I also am a director of marketing for a company, and so I had a work trip, and work's been tough recently. And my wife sent me a text, and she said, "Hey, this time apart is good for us." And I do think that distance makes the heart grow fonder a lot of times. And so I thought about it relationship wise, and I kind of joked back and I said, haha, what do you mean? And she
yeah.
said, she said, I think it'll just give us a break about talking about challenges.
Oh,
And it hit me in a really hard place, because I realized that maybe not with my kids, but with my wife, I was bringing home a lot of the baggage that I carried with me, and that's not fair. And so it's a drawback to the second of strength, where I can use that moment to right when I walk in the door, right when I'm with my family, right in the moments that matter, I can put down the baggage, I can put down my phone, I can put down all the things, and be very present and intentional in their lives. And when I do that, I I tend to be happier. I tend to change everything about the relationships that I have with my kids. And so that's how I would apply it. I think that there's always moments that, and a lot of it is related to our phones, right? We a lot of times we have our phones in between us and our kids. And if I was holding my phone here and doing this interview, you wouldn't think that you were very important. And so our kids need to see that they are the most important things in our life. And we may be on our phones doing something really important. They don't know that. They just know that the phone is way more important than they are. And so for me, the biggest one is when I get home, and anytime my kids are talking to me, anytime they're talking to me, I put that phone down, and I listen, and I just focus on what they're trying to say, so I can be present, because I think that that is the number one way that we can show love to our kids.
and that is that's so tangible for us dads to say every time we choose our kids we don't see how exactly does life, does the family, does the business, does the bank account move forward for each one of those moments that we set the phone. In fact, it doesn't. It goes the opposite. Maybe what was on the phone would move some of those tangible
Sure.
metrics forward, but those are each requiring strength to be present, to delay that response or text or that thing that we were hoping to get moving forward. And so I think, and I should just shout out quick to Heath and Joey and the RO team, because they introduced us, and that's
Yeah.
how we got connected. And those guys, RO, we did a whole episode with them, and we'll link the show notes how to get the RO box, the smart box that helps you put the phone down and gamifies
Yeah.
it. So
And that's where the phone goes. So
yeah,
it's when I walk in the door, we have an RO box that sits literally right next to the door, you know, where we put all our stuff, our keys and all
yeah.
their stuff. And I walk in and I open the RO box and I put that phone down. And for, you know, if this is the first episode you're listening to, the RO box is
Right.
exactly that. It's a device that gives you credit or gamifies your downtime on your phone so that you can be more intentional in the moments that you need to be intentional.
And to gamify even this conversation to compounded interest. My guess is every one of those 1 second of strength, put the phone in the box, put the phone down, is compounded. Like our kids, like the relational, I care about you, I value you. Those all stack up over time, just like I think money and compounded interest. So I think
I
it
think it
matters.
has to. And I had this thought the other day, that if we're not present in our kids' lives now, in good times, like when they're young, you know, you have younger kids than I do, but if we're not present in their now, don't expect to be present when things get hard. Don't expect to be present, that they will allow you into their presence
Yeah.
when they are struggling, when there is something going on. You have to build that sweat equity of your relationship. You have to deposit the money into
Yeah.
the bank. And if you don't, then don't, it's not fair for you to complain when your kid is pushing you away, or your kid is, you know, being a teenager or whatever and won't allow you in, because that work has to be done long before. And if it's not, then start now. Like whatever that baby step is, whatever that next step is to be present in their lives. And it can be as simple as, you know, laying with your kids in bed at night, which is something that I try and do every night. I actually have this fight, this 1 second of strength fight every single night. Kids go up to bed, the youngest in particular, and Dad, are you coming up tonight? Because they're trying to decide, are they going to give me a hug downstairs
Oh,
or are
sure.
they going to give me a hug upstairs? And they usually do give me a hug downstairs anyway. But there's a moment where I'm like, I'm tired. Upstairs, that's a lot of stairs. Like there's effort, right, to be this present parent. And every night, I think that 1 second of strength.
Mm.
Yes, I'll be there. And so they go up and I go up after. And then I lay in bed with my youngest kids. My oldest doesn't want that anymore, but you know, but but there's a moment there where I can choose to be intentional. And that's just one moment where you can begin to change a dynamic, begin to have conversations with your kid, begin to be there and be present so that you can build that equity for the other times in their lives.
And there is the power of loops, of like rhythm loops, and a rhythm loop that I guess I'll just turn this into a confessional right now. I often put our youngest to bed, and she's almost 2 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a process that takes about 15 minutes. In the last 10 minutes, the curtain on our RV upper bunk bed that we built like a chicken coop for a slider crib in the upper bunk
Sure.
bed. But I will have my phone with me because the curtain's down. I'm rubbing her back or singing, but I'm also responding to text messages and
Sure.
closing some other things out that I haven't done because my wife's got the other three in the other room, and my 2 year old does not know that on the other side of the curtain I'm only giving 10% of my focus to her. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But my other girls have noticed and know that I'm on my phone in that moment. And I sometimes use the podcast as I'm not going to do that anymore. I want to be
Yeah.
present for those moments because I don't have any more back rubs with my almost 2 year old. Like I'm not going to be needed for that. She'll put herself down soon.
And you know,
So there we go.
that's an interesting one. And I heard somewhere, like, you never know when the last time is that you're going to carry your kid. And that is scary, right? You never know when the last time is that they're not going to
Yes.
want you to lay in bed with them or whatever. And so I don't want to look back on my life and realize that I left some love on the table.
Yes.
I don't want to look back on my life and realize that I left love on the table, and that I could have done more. I could have been better. I could have changed something. And maybe, maybe our kids don't really know, 2 years old, they don't know you're on your phone. Like, or they don't,
Right.
maybe they're not, or maybe they do, right? Maybe they do feel that.
Uh,
Maybe they do feel that, but right? And someday we're going to look back on this life. And the question is, did you give it all you could in every moment, or did you mail it in? And the difference between the gap between where we are now as parents, as dads, as employees, as people, the difference between where we are now and where we want to be really comes down to the intentionality of it, right? And so if we are distracted in moments that require action, we're missing it.
yeah.
We are missing it. And that is going to roll over into every other aspect of our lives. And so if you can train yourself to, in those moments of back rubs, to be present, it's going to be much easier to be present in those moments of whatever it may be, right? Work, life, whatever. But if we can't do it in the little things, why would we expect to do it in the big things?
Wow. Tanner, I thought you were going to go man in the arena, Teddy Roosevelt on me there for a second. I thought, and our faces will be marred with sweats and blood, and or we're going to stay in the bleachers. Yeah, I love
That's
it. I
right.
love. So let's take it forward to coaching our kids to have 1 second of strength. So how do we come alongside? You can go with the teenage answer and the 6-year-old answer of like how do we be dads that really encourage that courage, that assertiveness, that strength in those moments.
It's a great question. And I found that every child is different, And so one of the things that I talk with parents about is, and that I've had to learn the hard way with my kids, is that they're all different, and any father out there that has kids knows that from top to bottom, my oldest 16-year-old to Bob, the youngest, like they are all so different in the way that they are motivated, in the way that they need to be loved, in the way that they need to be treated. And one example was my 13-year-old. He's a sports kid, loves sports. I've coached many of his teams. He does not respond. His love language, if you've ever read the book, like the 5 languages of love or whatever it's called, like his love language is words of affirmation. And as a coach, it is incredibly difficult to discipline a child, to discipline a player, and say, stay down on that ball, keep your feet in the batter's box, do whatever, right? Like tell him the things that he needs to do as a player, as a teenager, as an individual, as a grown, as a growing man. It is very challenging to tell him what to do when he receives that message as, I'm not good enough. And as a coach, it was really hard. And as a dad, it's really hard. And one time I remember the moment that I found out what his love language was. He was playing basketball on a team. I was not his coach. For once, I was sitting up in the stands, and he was just kind of running up the court like nothing. And I'm like, run, and I'm a sports, I'm a, like run, like go, like effort, like let's go. And he wasn't. He got down to the other end on defense. He played great defense on this kid. Kid shot the ball, missed it. He got the rebound, and I heard his coach from the other side yell, "Great defense, Cooper! Great rebound!"
Mhm.
And I have never seen that kid run faster up the court, like a bullet. And it was this moment where I was like, "Holy crap! I've been doing it wrong. I've been doing it wrong." And so I changed my approach to loving him. I changed my approach to coaching him. I changed my approach to everything I do with him. And then I tried to learn, what are the love languages of my other kids. And so if I was to teach a kid as a parent, how do you get your child to embrace their 1 second of strength? First, I would tell them about it. I would make very clear what a second of strength is. Don't leave it up to ambiguity, right? This is your second of strength. This is how you do it. And then I would coach them through the love language that they need to be taught through to help them grow, to help them learn, and and then be there for them and help them see it. And so
Hmm.
I think that too often we don't do that. We 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 love our kids the way that we want love, right? Like I'm a physical touch affection guy. My oldest daughter is anything but that. She doesn't want a hug.
Long
She
hugs, no
does
go, no go.
no, like even like a second hug. She doesn't want that anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but and so I have to change my approach with her,
Mm.
and she's really about quality time but not touching, right? And so I'm there for her in those certain ways. And so that's one way I would do it as a parent. When I talk with teenagers and I tell them about their second of strength, I give them just really real examples of what it is. And one of those is when Cooper, my 13-year-old, when he was learning to swim when he was 3 years old, 2 or 3, he like when I learned how to swim, my teacher was like, "Hey, here's a kickboard," and she was just like, "Hey," just like really super sweet and soft. She's like, "Hey, just hold on to the board and kick, 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 and kick, kick, kick," and just put your mouth in the water and blow bubbles, and it was like I learned, but whatever. And so when my 3-year-old learned how to swim, she would set him on the side of the pool and she would push him in. And then she would grab him out and she would put him on the side of the pool again
Yes.
and she would push him in again. And she did this over and over and over again until she graduated from that. And she would stand outside of the pool with him and she would shove him in.
Oh
And
my.
then she would grab him out and she would do it over and over. And for 3 weeks, that is literally all she did. And every time she did that, every time she pushed him into the pool, she said, "If you fall into the pool, turn and kick to the side." And she would push him in again. And she'd say, "If you fall into the pool, turn and kick to the side." Again, "If you fall into the pool, turn and kick to the side," over and over and over again. And when I talk with teenagers, it really comes down to that. There's a moment where you're going to fall into the pool,
Mm.
and it's okay.
Yes.
Everybody falls into the pool. I fall into the pool every single day in one aspect of my life or another or multiple.
Yes, we do.
It is okay. But when you do, you find that second of strength every time and you turn and kick to the side. Run away from those waters. Get out of those waters. Your life changes when you decide that you are important enough to kick
Mhm.
to the side. That's when life changes, when you recognize your value, when you recognize how important you are to this world, to other people, to the future people that you don't even know yet.
Yeah.
When you recognize your value, it will compel you to turn and kick to the side so that you can become the person that you want to become, because you need to be that person and someone else needs you to be that person. That's the difference.
And I hear you, Tanner, saying you are valued, you are valuable, you are like the world is better because you're in it. You are strong. You can get back to the side of the pool. Hey, you have choice. You're empowered. You're needed for somebody else's life. Like all these are like just like words that I hear seeking out of what you're saying.
Mhm.
What else would you add to that list that you would just tell that teenager?
The other thing that I tell every teenager is that you're in control. We can't control somebody else's actions, but we always get to control our reaction. And, even as a parent, that's critical, right? Like, again, I talked about bringing in this baggage from all the things that we do. We always do that. And then our kid does something that we don't, maybe not to be that big of a deal, but in the moment, it's a big deal because we're already on edge. And so we have this reactionary moment to something that happened. And now we are disciplining our kids in some way. And I'm not against disciplining kids, let's be honest, but I think that we can tailor our approach or tailor our moments or tailor how we do it to teach our kids in the right way. But I tell kids that they are in control. They are in control of everything that happens in their life. It's actually the first thing I tell kids when I go into assembly. I say, you are in control from here on out. No matter what happens, and life is hard. We deal with depression and anxiety. We deal with self-doubt and comparison and issues with self-worth and self-love. And we deal with all of these things on a daily basis, on one scale or another. But when we recognize that we are in control of our emotions, we are in control of our life, we are in control of everything that happens, we get to decide what is the next step forward. Nobody decides that for us. Nobody decides what you're going to do or how you're going to respond. You get to decide that. You get to choose what is going to be your action, what is going to be your reaction, and how you are going to walk the walk or talk the talk next. Because if you don't decide that, who does?
That's it.
It has to be you.
That's it. So good. I am going to make sure in the show notes, all of our dads have your website and your Instagram,
Sure.
because it's just like nuggets, like so good, micro content, right? But I wanted to tease one of your recent posts, just because we're always gathering book
Sure.
recommendations for dads. And a lot of
Yeah.
the books that you listed, probably more a little older than my kids, dads that have little older kids, is my guess. And there, I think you went through the lens of kind of the digital. These 5 books, I think, are more around digital and around social media. But can I just riff with you a little bit about these books
Yeah.
that you listed? So
Yeah.
I'll list them off, and then we can just kind of riff back and forth. So the first one was The Teenage Brain: A Neuroscientist's Survival Guide to Raising Adolescents and Young Adults. Anything to just mention about that one, quick?
I would read it. And I don't think it matters where your kids are in that, because I think also kids are growing up much sooner now, right?
Gotcha.
Like
Gotcha.
like I used to think of a teenager as like, well, yeah, 14, 15, 16, but like that tweenage age
Yeah.
is happening earlier. And especially with the digital age, it's forcing our kids to grow up earlier. Like kids are seeing pornography on average for the first time when they're 8 years old, which is mind blowing, right? And they're seeing it because of these digital devices with friends and all these things. So,
Mm.
so the teenage brain is for me, was really understanding the why between what my kids want, why my kids are doing what they're doing. And it allowed me to understand how I can, again, tailor my approach as a parent to fix that. And an example she gives in the book, and an example we had in my house 4 months ago, was my 13-year-old was like, I want to grow my hair out. And we're like, now, we're just used to cutting his hair, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
whatever. But he is exploring his personality. He is exploring who he is. He is exploring his emotional and all these things. And so in the book, she just says, yeah, if that's their form of expression, why not let them do it in a way that you can be around and control? Because if you block that,
Mm.
where are they going next?
And
Because they're going to
other,
continue to grow
yes.
and decide and form who they want to be. I'd much rather do that while I'm around,
Yep.
instead of them doing it while I'm not around in some other way, in some other fashion that I'm not aware of. So that book
It's good.
crosses a lot, but it's a phenomenal book that I would recommend every parent read.
I love that the description said about the brain, emotional, irrational, and awesome. That's the brain. Like,
Yeah,
it's there's that
yeah,
side as well.
yeah,
The next
absolutely.
one, the next one is Glow Kids: How Screen Addiction is Hijacking Our Kids and How to Break the Trance. What would you mention on
Yeah,
this one?
this book is really foundational, and I think regardless of what age your kids are, because we give our kids the iBabysitter at a very young age, right? The iPad, we're like, mom, dad needs a break. We give them the iPad, we give them a phone, we give them a video game, we whatever, because to us it feels like peace. To them, it forms addiction. And so this book will begin to tell you as a parent why your kid is acting the way your kid is acting because of these devices. And look, again, I am not anti smartphones. I'm not anti video games. We've got a PlayStation upstairs. We've got, my oldest daughter has a smartphone. My other kids do not. And so I'm not anti these things. until they start to steal your happiness and limit your potential. And then I get really passionate about it. And so Glow Kids will inform parents why this is having this like impact on their brain. And every parent has taken a phone or a video game away from their kids, and the result is what? Explosion.
Exactly. Meltdown.
That is because you just took away a drug from their brain.
It's firing.
And studies show that the digital devices, they are raising dopamine levels in the child's brain at a much greater rate than other things. You think about you think about the feeling when you eat a cookie. You think about the pleasure of sex. You think about all these things. It raises your brain dopamine above all of that on a sustained level for hours, or sometimes, right? How long is a kid on those devices? It sustains that level. And when you pull that away, you are literally ripping away a drug. And so this
Wow.
book will start to like inform parents about what's happening with that.
All right, more accountability. I'm going to read that one. I'm going to read Glow Kid. Here we go. The next one, just the subtitle. I was like, oh my, please, every dad with boys, please read this book.
So important.
I'm praying for 4 specific boys. A lot. There's 4 boys that receive a lot of prayer that don't know me yet because they're my 4 girls' future husbands. And so
Absolutely.
here's what I pray for them. I mean, it's this tagline. So this one's called "Boys Adrift: The 5 Factors Driving the Growing Epidemic of Unmotivated Boys and Underachieving Young Men." Whoa! Tell me
I mean,
about that one.
that says it all,
It does.
really. And we are seeing this unfold real time in these generations, right? And it's not just generational, but we're seeing it unfold, and we see these boys who are just not there, lackadaisical, like just
Soft. Yeah.
not trying, not caring, not trying to become the person that they can become. And so this book really goes into the mentality and the whys, and then it gives examples. Don't ask me what they are because I can't remember off the top of my head, but it gives examples of what we should be doing and how we can change this narrative as a parent. There's also a book called Girls Adrift, but there's opportunity for us as parents to understand why this is happening to our boys, and then step in so it doesn't happen to our boys, right? And because and you're right, like, and it's a scary thought to think about my daughters and who they're going to marry and what type of young man that's going to be. And I hope that it's a young man who is determined and motivated to love and grow and do all the things that I would hope for her, because she deserves that. She deserves, both my daughters deserve that guy, because I know as a dad how special and incredible they are. And if they can't find somebody because of this like boys adrift mentality, which is increasing in our society, that's scary. That's really scary. And what's the world going to look like? And then what are their kids going to look like? And how does this unfold over generations and generations if we don't recognize as parents and then step in to save them?
Wow. We'll hit these last 2 a little faster. So the next one is
Okay.
Unselfie: Why Empathetic Kids Succeed in Our All About Me World.
Yeah. So a big problem right now in the world is being all about me and
Self-absorption.
self-absorption, and it turns into bullying, and it turns into just a world where it's about me. And Unselfie is about teaching your kids how to have empathy. And this book has so many examples and ways to encourage your kids to have empathy, to look out for other people, so that you can always, walk a mile in their shoes before you say something, before you do something, before you, I don't know. And so it's a great book that that leans, and honestly, it's something that every person needs in the social media selfie world. Every person needs to have a little bit more empathy. And I think if we did, I think we'd change the world. I think we would do good, do better, be better, and change people in a different way. And if it doesn't change the world, it'll certainly change you, and it'll change the way that people look at you. Because I hope that some point people look at me and go, he was just a good person. I hope nobody ever is like, oh man, that guy is so conceited and such a jerk. I hope that doesn't happen.
Same. Same about you and about me.
Yeah.
the the chaos machine is the fifth one. The chaos machine, the inside story of how social media rewired our minds and our world.
Yeah. This is a great one. And so he goes in depth into what is happening with social media and how they are psychologically controlling everything in your brain. And you get into this feedback loop, right? And so a good example, if you're in the social media world, right, you post something on social media and it blows up and does great or whatever, you get likes, and then all of a sudden you feel good because you got likes.
Yeah.
And then you post something else and it doesn't do as good, and then you start to question your value and go, man, well, what, people didn't like my content, people didn't like who I am, they don't like the way that I look. And so you do something that social media is just prepared and waiting for you to do. You change your approach to posting or doing things for your friends or whatever it may be. You change your approach so that the algorithm will get more likes and more approval. And so this book goes in depth of with interviewing people from Silicon Valley and the people who designed this stuff. It goes in depth of the trick that they played on every one of us to capture us and make sure that we are spending more and more time on it. And one of the quotes in there is something along the lines of you have to recognize that our generation, yours and mine, is the last generation that will ever remember the way it was, and nobody else will. Because if you have a child that is under 18 years old, they don't know a world without social media. They don't know a world without these digital devices that are not going away. And so this book is scary and makes you sick, but makes you recognize why it's doing what it's doing to you and me and our kids in particular, or really everyone, but what it's doing so that we can begin to change the narrative and help our kids out of this state of this
Chaos.
liking
Yeah.
feedback loop.
Yeah.
So
Whoa, Tanner, thank you. And it's so easy because I can just link over to that blog post. You got the links to all the books, the
yep,
Amazon links, and can probably listen to them or read the hard copy. Thank you for this conversation. I wanted to give you the last
absolutely.
kind of 2 or 3 minutes. Anything else that you're like, man, this might be helpful for the Dad Awesome community? Anything else on your heart that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we have a responsibility as a parent to love our kids more, love our kids harder, be present every day. And the reality is that as a dad, we come up short a lot. You know, I think we come up short in our own minds more often. And hopefully the listeners are, if they're listening to this podcast, it's because they want to be a better dad, quite frankly. And we come up short on that a lot. But at the end of the day, our kids don't know that. They just see us as us. They see us every day. And I think about my own dad who, you know, is awesome. He was present. He worked hard. He taught me a lot. I don't remember one negative thing about my dad. I'll get emotional on that, but I don't remember one negative thing. And your kids are not holding on to your faults. They are not holding on to the time you yelled at them. They are not holding on to any of that baggage that you think that you're holding yourself hostage for. They are not holding on to that. at all. So give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace and decide to be a little bit better today. Learn from the things that we've learn from our past, learn from all those things, and take that next step forward. Find your 1 second of strength and determine to be better. And when you do that every single day, you're going to look back on your life and you're going to be pretty dang satisfied with what you did, who you are, how you've done it. And more importantly, your kids are going to turn around one day and go, man, he was just good. And if you can do that, you've kind of done it.
Thank you, Tanner.